Welcome to video number 9 of my 13-part video series. The 13 big mistakes that beginning saxophonists and experienced saxophonists are making that cause them not to move up to the next level or even not to get started in the first place. So, what is this one about? This is about not putting in the time. This is huge. Again, hinted at very strongly in my other videos. Again, you'll see links to those other videos where I also speak about this subject because I want you to hear the subject from different perspectives. Number one, there is this myth out there that you can approach playing a musical instrument casually, right? This may be true of guitar and piano, and I say this respectfully because I've had a lot of guitarists, some who even make millions of pounds professionally. These are your pop artists who, let's be quite frank, they cannot play the instrument very well, but they can strum, right? That's what makes the guitar a very versatile instrument. That's why if you look at any of the instruments you use in pop music, it's because you can get to a level of proficiency, or at least money-making proficiency, as I call it, quite easily. That's why guitar and keyboards are used extensively in popular music, because it's fairly easy to get there. Even then, even after all this, the majority of singers cannot sing. No, majority of singers, pardon me for saying this, the majority of singers cannot play a musical instrument. Beyonce can't play a musical instrument. Neither can Nicki Minaj. Neither can Taylor Swift. But because of the ability for them to maybe do a bit of singer-songwriting, it actually works. Anyway, scratch Taylor from that. I've seen Taylor Swift play guitar, but I don't see her playing guitar anymore though. The point is this. Because of this, people have this idea that you can learn to play an instrument, particularly one which has the difficulties like the saxophone, by simply winging it. This is extremely important. We have a lot of winging it pianists. These are the guys who seem to be able to play piano, but trust me, when I come to them with my accompaniments, particularly for my classical pieces or jazz pieces, they can't play proficiently. Guitarists are the good point in it. There are many who can wing it, many who sound good. They got the nice tune which can actually turn a girl's head, you know, or girls who can play all that girl band stuff, right? But when it comes to actually playing the guitar on a serious level, we are able to play with seasoned professionals. They don't have what it takes. But you can wing it. You can actually get to a level of proficiency in both the piano and the guitar where people around you in your own circle think you are the bomb, right? And that, for many people, is good enough. Unfortunately, this is not true of the saxophone. Not only do you need to put in the time with the saxophone, but you also need to put in the time consistently. Remember, it takes 2 years before you sound good on the instrument. But more importantly, I need to explain this issue of consistency. And I've chosen this particular video to let loose on some of these huge myths. Number one, the extreme practice myth. This one comes from Jazz Stories by Charlie Parker and Sonny Rollins. The Charlie Parker story is that Charlie Parker practiced for 15 to 16 hours every single day from the age of approximately 15 through to 19. This is why he had an exceptional technique on the alto saxophone. Right? That's the first one, the Charlie Parker myth. The Sonny Rollins one is Sonny Rollins felt that he wasn't playing to his fullest potential, so he went under a bridge in New York. I've forgotten the name of the bridge, but it's not important. And he played for over 1.5 years for 8 to 9 hours every day under a bridge till he improved his technique. Hearing such stories kills people's dreams of becoming saxophonists. So let me analyze them. Number one, the Charlie Parker story, right? Charlie Parker was an obsessive. There's no other polite way of putting it, but it was. Charlie really could not control his own inner demons. Charlie was into sex, drugs, and food. And when any one of them were taken out, he went into another addiction. For example, when he wasn't taking drugs, he was drinking too much. When he was not drinking too much, he was taking drugs. You know, and then of course there's the eating of fried chicken and all this, as we know, the problems of obesity. So how is it that he became a great player? My contention is this. Charlie Parker was just born in a situation where he could not get access to good music lessons. And here's another big myth. The myth is that Charlie Parker was completely self-taught. This could be nothing further than the truth. Charlie Parker's mother bought him a saxophone, but he did have a teacher. In fact, from what is understood, Charlie Parker had a teacher from the ages of 12 through to 17. before he broke with the teacher for whatever reason and decided to go on this thing playing on his own. More importantly, the reason for him breaking from the teacher is an incident which happened, and it's in Bird the movie, in that Charlie Parker at a young age had a seasoned jazz musician come in, and he went to a cutting session, and his playing was so terrible that the gentleman who ran the band, who was a drummer, threw a cymbal at him. And that's what caused Charlie Parker to go and start to practice using this marathon technique. But it's important to understand, Charlie was taught the fundamentals of music very well. Charlie Parker could read music exceptionally proficiently. He was not no mug player, contrary to what people say. He also had a good understanding of chord sequences. That's why he was able to use extended sequences and progressions in the playing of bebop. So Charlie Parker actually did study with someone. It didn't just come to him. He was not, and this is an important point, because when these stories are told, people start to hear things which are not there. So he probably had just 5 years of classical saxophone training before he decided to practice on his own for these hours. Secondly, when you speak about this time, the idea is that Charlie was playing continuously for this period of time. They raised the story of complaints by his neighbors because he was playing. Firstly, your neighbors ain't going to complain because you're playing all day. They're going to complain because you're playing in antisocial hours. That means you're playing at night. Second point to understand about this myth is that Charlie Parker was working on particular things. In other words, he was playing particular sequences, particular ideas of playing, which he was working on to further him going forward. He was not practicing randomly. This is very, very crucial. Because here's what I found. Practice does not make perfect. Practice does not make proficiency. Perfect practice makes perfect. In the majority of saxophonists I've interviewed, even in my own playing, there is a danger of this idea of what I call marathoning. Marathoning is the idea that you try to practice everything in a 2-hour, 1-hour period every day. Not only is this not practical, it's also not the best way to encourage yourself to practice daily. What I teach, and this is something of my own technique, is a progressive method of practicing, which you'll find in my PlaySaxNow Basics course. Again, for those of you looking for the course, go to the website, you'll find it's available there. In that course, I speak in great detail of this issue about practicing. However, let me just give you a few cliff notes for you to go away with. Number one, you need to put in the time. Putting in the time means consistency, not bulk of time. So get this out of your head, right? Secondly, to go back to the Sonny Rollins story. Sonny Rollins again was working on particular things, and he was not playing for all eight of those hours. This is an important point, right? He had breaks. There were different things that he was doing, right? So when people hear these stories which are told about jazz legends, particularly in the saxophone, they want to go marathoning. No. The truth is this. If you are prepared to practice consistently on a daily basis, even for 15 minutes to half an hour, you'll make more progress than marathoning for 2 to 3 hours every weekend, what we call the weekend warrior saxophone technique. The key is to understand is that you start to make progress gradually. And the way to approach this idea of putting the time in is, how do you lose weight? Everybody knows you cannot lose weight exercising once a week. It doesn't work. In fact, according to what we're being told, you have to cut your diet, right? In other words, you have to have a diet which is low in calories, and you have to walk a minimum of half an hour a day until you're kind of out of puff, in order for you to gain a fitness level which ensures you don't get all these diseases. And the truth is, it has to be done daily. The same thing is true when you want to put in the time to play the saxophone. You have taken up playing a musical instrument. That means a commitment to daily practice. Daily practice means you put the saxophone in your mouth and you blow it on a daily basis. Whether it be practicing scales, different exercises or not. Again, I go into this in great detail in my PlaySaxNow Basics course. One of the things which is problematic, which I find with saxophonists, is this. When I ask them a simple profiling question, with my one-to-one students, how do you practice? I get a confusion of answers. The important thing to realize is that when I speak to experienced players, they're not confused about what they practice. One of the things you need to be clear about is clarity. In the beginning, you're learning the fundamentals of the saxophone. And I often tell my students that you need to be doing a good proportion of even half an hour practice to every 10 to 15 minutes where you're reading something. Reason being is I want them to get used to the idea of listening to the instrument. This is critical. What I find, and this is something which is controversial when I say this about putting in the time, it's also putting in the time for the right things. Because of the intonation problems on the saxophone, unless you play your saxophone slowly and on its own without worrying about the vagaries of reading sheet music, you're not going to hear the problems which are natural to each individual saxophone. So again, putting in the time means putting in quality better than quantity. And I have to say this because, again, what is being perpetuated in the music community over and over again is this idea of marathoning. Firstly, you don't have the physical stamina when you first start playing the instrument to be able to play for even an hour. If you're doing it correctly, you will only last about 10 to 15 minutes. And I know this because when I play correctly myself, even I, as a seasoned pro, I can only play for 2 hours, and that's not even continuously, on the top of my game, right? In other words, everything is right. You're getting everything sweet. The tone is beautiful. There's shine. There's the right amount of vibrato. There's the right amount of warmth. You can't do this. Even that's the reason why concerts are short. I mean, a concert of more than 2 hours for a saxophonist is hell because of the fact that there's so much which has to be done. There's a certain point where even I get tired, but my stamina is better than yours as a beginner. So the question you must ask about putting in the time is putting in the time consistently, not over a 2-year period. And this is important because whenever I've had people write to me or complain that they're having problems playing the saxophone, the first fundamental I check here is practice. And what I tell them to do, and it's not that people lie about the practice, is I tell them, well, have a practice journal, sit down and have a book where you write down when you practice. And sure enough, after 2 weeks, when they send me the practice journal, I can see where the problem is. The problem is not only that they're not practicing, there's no consistency to their practice. They don't practice on a daily basis. More importantly, many of them do not practice the same things every day, which is important for you to get some form of baseline in order for you to build on, to go up to more advanced techniques. So this putting in the time is crucial for learning a woodwind instrument, brass instrument, particularly any instrument which requires you to have a level of technique. Even violin and cello will be the same thing because of you having to find the notes. But you need to put in the time to play the saxophone. No amount of watching YouTube videos, no amount of going to teachers, no amount of buying a fancy saxophone or fancy method books is going to change the fact that you need to put in the time consistently if you want to play the saxophone at a high level. Or, put bluntly, if you want to play the saxophone at all, it is very obvious to me when I come and hear amateurs play in jam sessions who has put in the time and who hasn't. I can hear it almost immediately. Weekend warrior technique may work for piano and guitar. Let me tell you something, it don't work for saxophone. So I hope you've learned something valuable in this video. Once again, remember to like the video, share it with other people, and put your comments down below. Most importantly, let's go on to the idea of video number 10. Not knowing your music theory, intervals, practical musicianship. I'll explain this huge thing in video number 10. And let me tell you something. This is something which I see too many teachers neglecting. So look forward to seeing you in video number 10. And remember to play your sax now.